Last week at Kabbalat Shabbat, I mentioned how much I was looking forward to Yom Yerushalayim. During the 2 different years I lived in Israel, I barely left Jerusalem. I love that city, and I love Yom Yerushalayim. Dancing and celebrating in the streets, recognizing how lucky we are to be living when we do. How special and unique it is to be able to walk freely as a Jew through the streets of Jerusalem. For so much of Jewish history, our ancestors lived in exile from the land. And even for most of the first 2 decades of the modern state's existence, Jerusalem was split in 2. We were separated from our holiest sites by barbed wire, walls, and minefields. This week, though, has been incredibly painful. The violence in Israel continues to escalate. Fighting in the streets, mobs attacking, businesses, homes, and even synagogues destroyed. A seemingly endless barrage of rockets. The count of both Israelis and Palestinians killed or injured continues to grow. The discourse in social media and in the news is difficult to take in. It seems to be incredibly polarized. One side is completely right and the other completely wrong. As a Zionist, a lover of Israel and a firm believer in the right of Jewish self-determination in our ancestral land, it pains me to read what I've seen this past week. People defending violent attacks on civilians, people claiming Israel's brought this on themselves for violating the rights of Palestinians. If you can't see the difference between attacking military targets and firing rockets deliberately at schools, homes, and places of worship, or if you believe that every Israeli or Zionist is responsible for every single decision and action of the Israeli government and are therefore a legitimate target, or if solely because more Palestinians than Israelis have died in the fighting, you believe that Israel is the aggressor, not the victim, then your moral compass needs to be calibrated. How many rockets should be allowed to rain on Israel's cities before action is taken? Collateral damage is an awful event. And it's not just that it happens, but the word itself. It distances us from what is actually happening, the emotions we should feel. Collateral damage means that innocent people have died, and that's awful. We should feel bad when that happens. We should wrestle with what it means. But that's the difference between war and terrorism. War is always awful. It should not be celebrated, and it should only be a last resort when other roads have been exhausted. But it is necessary at times, and it alone is not immoral. Self-defense is not a moral violation. Terrorism is. Self-defense means attacking when your life is in danger, when there is no other alternative. If you can't see the difference between firing at an apartment building because it's being used to fire rockets at civilians and deliberately firing at civilians, then your moral compass is miscalibrated. The death toll is one-sided because Israel invests money and technology into protecting civilians, and Hamas uses civilian deaths to gain political capital around the world. Back in 2014, an Indian news crew captured on video Hamas militants building and using a rocket launch site right outside their hotel room window. It was in the middle of a highly populated residential area. It's not rare that it happened, only rare that it was captured on video. Israel is not perfect. No country is. Nothing in reality lives up to its imagined ideal. But we can still work towards that ideal, towards a day when Israelis and Palestinian children will grow up with peace rather than war, with love rather than hate. At the same time, I've seen posts that dehumanize not Hamas, but all Palestinians. If you don't believe Palestinians have a right to live in peace and security, to economic and educational opportunities, and if you can't distinguish between terrorists and victims, because make no mistake, Palestinian people are victims of Hamas too, then your moral compass is miscalibrated. In the media, we see statistics, reports of the number of rockets fired or an Israeli airstrike. We see numbers of people killed and injured, but they're just numbers. They're abstracted from what they really are, human beings. In our parshat this week, God commands Moses to take a census of the people. It's interesting. As opposed to other times a census is taken, here Moses specifically is instructed to list the names of each person counted. The biblical commentator Sforno notes The names of the individuals reflect their specific individuality. Here we are in the first parshat of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers as it's known in English. A fitting name since it's filled with just that, numbers. It starts with a census, and throughout it we hear statistics and figures, numbers of the Israelites' journey through the wilderness. Yet right there, in the very second verse, we get a powerful message. People are more than simply a number. The command to list their names is a reminder that each number is a unique individual, a person. We can't let ourselves be abstracted from what is going on, allowing people to become statistics. Each person injured, each person killed is a person. I will never apologize for loving Israel. I will never apologize for believing in the right of the Jewish state to exist. But I also won't apologize for recognizing that Palestinians are people too. That people on both sides suffer needlessly, Israelis and Palestinians. If you can't see that, then your moral compass isn't just miscalibrated, it's broken. But also, if you can't see the difference between targeting those who commit acts of violence, targeting those who fire rockets at civilians who plan attacks against men, women, and children, versus those who fire indiscriminately at populated cities, then your moral compass isn't just miscalibrated, it's broken too. In the end, it seems more and more people want an answer to be absolute. Either the violence is 100% the fault of the Palestinians or the Israelis. It feels like nuance no longer exists in our increasingly polarized world. To walk in the middle path, can be lonely. It's like a desert, sparsely populated. But to those who find themselves standing there alone, remember, it was Bamidbar where the Torah was given. It's in the desert that truth can be found. I pray that soon we'll see an end to the fighting, an end to the violence and the hate, that God will soon fulfill the promise of Isaiah's prophecy, a day when we can invest our resources in the betterment of humanity, not into defense systems and weapons. A time when nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Shabbat Shalom.